Provocative, engaging, and usually quite a lady.
Okay, they're asking for it.
What's a mayor to do? Especially the mayor of New York City. You have seen it, I have seen it, the world is watching as New York seemingly is falling apart. How many videos have you seen where some guy on the street just walks up, punches somebody in the face, pushes an old woman on the ground, tries to snatch a woman's baby out of her hand? Some guy walks into a store and decides he's going to go shopping and not pay for anything and then turn around and punch the clerk. These kinds of things have just become normalized in New York City. But something else is happening that has really ticked off Eric Adams, the mayor of New York. Mayor Adams says that this recent flooding, and I don't know if it's really a flooding, but yeah, there are thousands of illegal immigrants that are coming into New York City. And they're coming courtesy of Texas Governor Greg Abbott. Well, Greg Abbott, he is the governor of the great state of Texas, which happens to be a border state. I mean, when people come from the southern parts of the hemisphere, they come out of Mexico, they come out of Central America, that's one of the places they're going to stop first, is in Texas. So Governor Abbott has figured this out. He's figured it out a long time ago. Washington, D.C., particularly under President Biden, they have absolutely no interest whatsoever of doing anything about illegal immigrants coming into the country. As a matter of fact, President Biden, he offered an open invitation to anybody who could get into the country in the first 100 days of his administration. You're safe. You got that, Jack? You are safe. The problem is people listen, and people said, we're going to get there. And I remember watching a number of interviews of the immigrants, the illegals who were trying to make their way into the country. And I'm not even suggesting that these are bad people, other than the fact that they're breaking our laws when it comes to immigration. I'm not saying that, oh, these people are so terrible. That's not my point. Some of them are, no doubt about it, but I think that a good number of them are just trying to get work. They're trying to make a better way. And I mean, you really aren't going to blame them for that. It's not their responsibility to uphold U.S. immigration laws. Now, they should obey them, but that's what we have a federal agency for. That's why we have federal laws. That's why we have a president. It's their responsibility to protect our borders. But back to Mayor Adams. Mayor Adams says that, okay, we've watched tens of thousands of illegals being bussed into our city, and it's not right. And Governor Abbott is the cause of this problem. Our resources are strained. We don't have places for these people to stay. They need health care. They need this. They need that. We've got our own problems with our own people. So why is he doing this? He actually goes a bit further. What he said just a couple of days ago is that Governor Abbott is a pretty crafty guy. And while he says he never used the word racist, he clearly was suggesting that his efforts are racist. He says that Governor Abbott is intentionally sending the illegals to black-led cities. He says it's not a coincidence that Governor Abbott is sending the illegals to his city, New York. He's sending them to Washington, D.C. He's sending them to Philadelphia, to Chicago. These are black-led cities. And he says that ain't right. And he's disappointed. And he wants to call him out for it. And he says he's passed all of these other cities between New York and the state of Texas that he could have dropped these people off in. But no, he had to bring them to New York. He had to send them to Chicago. He had to send them to places where blacks are running the city. So come on, put two and two together, people. Abbott is not only a bad guy, he's a sneaky guy.
Governor Abbott sent asylum seekers to New York, black mayor, to Washington, black mayor, to Houston, black mayor, to Los Angeles, black mayor, to Denver, black mayor. He passed over thousands of cities to land here. And so I don't think El Paso, I don't think Brownsville, Texas, I don't think any of those other cities should have to bear the weight of the failure in Washington, D.C. And so it was wrong for the mayor of El Paso to do it. No one should use human beings as political pawns. And I cannot ignore the fact that Governor Abbott sent migrants only to cities with their black mayors and is undermining our cities.
Well, that's a very serious charge. I mean, we're talking about the governor of an American state who has a grand plan. He has unleashed a scheme to undermine cities, and not just cities, major cities. And not just major cities, but major cities that are led by blacks. This man is all about destruction. And he's going to do it by unleashing illegals into black-led cities just to undermine them. I want to believe Eric Adams. I don't want to believe, I'll put it this way, I don't want to believe that the mayor of the largest city in America is just spewing foolishness. I don't want to believe that. So I did a little research. I wanted to find out for myself. Governor Abbott, why did you do that? You knew. You should have guessed. You should have assumed that if you added illegals into already troubled cities, and troubled cities that are led by black people, that you would undermine these cities. You passed by several other places where you could have dropped your busloads of illegals, but no, you had to come to Chicago. You had to send them to New York, to Philadelphia, to Washington, D.C., to Los Angeles, because you knew good and well that blacks are there. And I'll undermine those cities. I'll do that. Not only will I do that, I'll cause trouble in those cities. That's what I'll do. Black-led cities. So I guess that's what Eric Adams wants us to believe. Well, here's the dirty little secret that Eric Adams conveniently forgot to mention. These are sanctuary cities. These are self-declared sanctuary cities.
Uh-oh.
New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, and there are others, but these are the 5 big ones. These are places where the mayors have said, we are sanctuary cities. It means that the federal police, and I mean immigration officials, ICE, they can't come into the city and detain someone based on their legal status. If they're not a citizen, keep it moving, bud. That's what these mayors have said. A sanctuary city normally doesn't even allow its local police or any city employees to ask, not even ask about a person's immigration status. So you tell me. It just made sense to me that if you have a border state with border cities, cities that literally abut, the border that people are crossing into the country illegally, they're flooding these towns. In many of these towns, they are creating havoc. They are overrunning these cities. Resources are just being sucked up. So why would you just sit there and say, well, okay, the president and, he won't do anything about it. Well, actually, by the way, Biden has announced there's some things he's about to do about it, Jack. We'll get to that a little bit later. Why would he just say, let me flood my state? Let me put added burden on the residents of this state. We're not a sanctuary city. We want people to abide by the law. We want law enforcement to do their job. We want the border agents to protect the border. No, there are a number of large cities which happen to be led by black people that have declared that they are sanctuary cities, that the feds, that the local police, that the municipal employees cannot interrupt the activities by asking them, hey, are you legal here? I remember clearly when Lori Lightfoot said that no, ICE could not come into Chicago and detain illegals. So what's the big whoop whoop about? Eric Adams, what's the big whoop whoop about? I'll tell you what the big whoop whoop is about. Immigrants, illegal aliens, they understand something. This is their golden moment. This is their golden opportunity, if ever there was an opportunity, to rush into the country without anybody asking any questions. Now is the appointed time. It really is just that simple. Okay, I think it's important, I really do, that we get a real handle on language, the language that's surrounding all of this, because language is important. Now, we went from a point where people that entered the country illegally were called illegal aliens. And that's actually a legal term. You can find the word alien in federal statutes, and you can obviously find the word illegal. Illegal not as much as the word alien. The word alien is there multiple times, and it simply means someone who is here, who is not here legally. They're an alien. It's not an offensive term if you just stick to what the meaning is. But about, I'd say 10 years or so ago, that became a term that we should abandon. And I'm not even here to argue about that. If you don't want to say the word illegal alien, despite we have illegal aliens coming into the country, that's cool. That's fine. I remember when the Associated Press, the AP style book, they no longer used the term illegal alien. Why? Because they said that, people can't be illegal. Illegal is an action. Okay, fine. Well, so be it. Then we moved over to the term immigrants. And I never liked that because an immigrant, well, legal immigrants, they obviously come here. They follow the path to naturalization, and that's that. But then you have people who don't follow the path. They come across the border and they say, hey, I'm here. Treat me like you would anybody else. Give me all of the rights, all of the privileges, all of the resources, all of the benefits as anyone else. Despite the fact that I've broken your law, I'm here when I shouldn't be here. I decided I'm not going to follow the path to citizenship. Just take care of me. Then we moved over to migrant. Well, you have to understand, these are people, they have migrated over to our country, and we should do whatever we can to make them feel at ease. Today, the current term du jour is asylum seekers, but that's a very deceptive term when we're talking about this massive flow of illegal immigration. See, asylum seekers, that's a very specific term. In fact, asylum and naturalization, those are the two major benefits that this country bestows to an alien. The best that this country can offer an alien is naturalization, meaning you go through the process and you become a citizen the legal way. Or we can offer asylum. But asylum is not offered because, oh my, I know I can make more money if I can just get to the U.S. I would love to raise my children in a good school, in a good community. I'm an asylum seeker. No, you are not. An asylum seeker is someone who is at grave danger if they remain in their country. And that's because the government is coming after them based on their race, based on their religion, based on their affiliation with an organization. It's very, very specific. They face certain death, and they need to seek asylum. We had a situation like that. Oh, I remember it was back during President Obama's administration, and you may recall this as well. Over in the Middle East, Christians were being killed. They were being beheaded. They were being buried alive. And many organizations were trying to help them so that they could live. Not so that they could live in a nice home, so not that they could get a good job, so that they could live, so that they can continue to breathe. So they did get here. And many of them wound up being put into prison, being placed into jail. That's real. As they say, Google it. But these are not asylum seekers, yet that's the term. If you listen to the president, if you listen to lots of reporters, if you read articles, you'll see the illegals that are flooding across our border being referred to as asylum seekers. But that's in stark contrast to what many of them say when journalists are at the borders and have asked many of them, why are they here? And you know what they often say? I want a job. I'm not going to blame anybody for wanting a job. But the problem is they have just mucked up the process so much by tying the hands of the border agents, by turning a blind eye, by sneaking people in under the cover of darkness, and that has happened a lot, putting them on planes. What city do you want to go to? I'll take Chicago. I'll take New York. I'll take Martha's Vineyard. Hey, wait a minute now. Who told you about that? No Martha's Vineyard for you. But this is the problem. We have a willful desire not to uphold the law. And that's a problem. Now, you may be thinking, oh, it's only a problem for people that just don't like foreigners. It's only a problem for racists. It's only a problem for xenophobic people who just don't want anybody else in the country. No, it's not just a problem for people like that. It's a problem for me. And I'll tell you, if it's not now, very soon it's going to be a problem for you too. You don't really believe that, do you? Well, you know what? I can see why. You're living in a nice, comfortable community, maybe a nice city. Maybe you don't even pay attention to sanctuary versus non-sanctuary, or to use the new term, a welcoming city versus a non-welcoming city. But the fact of the matter is, let's take a look at Chicago. Chicago actually became a sanctuary city back in 1985. It was Chicago's first black mayor, Mayor Harold Washington, who he issued an executive order saying we're a sanctuary city. And I don't think very many Chicagoans paid attention. They didn't bat an eye. Didn't matter. But now people are paying attention. Since Biden has gotten into office, Chicago has been on the receiving end of a number of illegals. The same thing has been happening in New York and D.C. and a number of other cities, sanctuary cities, I might add, and nobody has said a word, not a peep. Mayor Lightfoot, Adams, none of these people. But the moment that Abbott out of Texas, the moment he sent somebody, when he sent them to Martha's Vineyard, suddenly, you can't do that. And now suddenly these mayors are saying, this is so wrong. Lightfoot just declared Chicago in a state of emergency. Governor Pritzker says, I agree. We've got some issues here. But what about the people? What about the residents? What about the voters? Where y'all been? Now suddenly, oh, no. And you know what? I appreciate that. I get it. I understand it. Because now what's happening is that we're seeing illegals being placed here and tucked there and put in hotels and police stations and park district buildings and vacant schools and roaming neighborhoods. And people are like, wait. So I'm simply saying, do not think that it can't happen to you. And by the way, just in case you are thinking, this is a bunch of illegal Mexicans coming up across the border and people have issues with it. Well, not so fast. According to the U.S. Border Patrol Services, they have apprehended many people from 160 countries. Can you imagine that? People are flying from all over the world. They're landing over in Central America or South America, and they're coming up through Mexico. And Mexico, by the way, I just actually learned this today. they're just handing out, rubber stamping these papers so that they can just flow. Just come in and get right out, go right up north, get into the U.S. So this is actually a crisis. And since we are now, let me check my watch. Yeah, we're about T-minus 4 hours from when Title 42 will be lifted. Oh yeah, people had better start paying attention, just like some people in Chicago are starting to do.
You're not supposed to interrupt. You're not supposed to interrupt. Please let me finish.
It was difficult for city leaders to get a word in, as the vast majority of residents inside this school gym made it clear they do not want the former South Shore High School to be used for helping migrants. Calling for the city to halt its plans.
I am just outraged. I'm outraged, and I don't understand why our community was chosen.
Residents asked questions and expressed their concerns. Number one is safety.
I don't hate anyone. I just want to feel safe.
And number two is the concern for their own neighbors lacking resources.
I think that would be fair. And that you also provide that bed, that shower, that meal, that housing.
The city says the empty school would not be a shelter, but a respite center, which means it's an even more temporary space where migrants can take a quick shower and get a hot meal. The city is considering a phased approach using the first floor only, starting with 250 migrants and eventually helping up to 500.
8th Ward, I hear you loud and clear.
Alderwoman Michelle Harris telling residents she's here to support them and remains focused on the 8th Ward.
While this crisis may constitute an emergency for the city of Chicago, it does not constitute an emergency for the South Shore community.
The city says the first migrants that would be helped here are the more than 300 that are currently sleeping on the floors of Chicago police stations. The city says this is not a done deal, but calling it a fluid situation. Reporting in South Shore, Lexi Suter, NBC5 News.
Is it possible that things won't be as bad as they look like they're going to be? I say that because the mayors have made some promises. They've said things like, this will only be a temporary situation. You can expect the illegals to be in your communities 2, 3, 4 months at the most. And if we put them in schools or if we put them in abandoned buildings or whatever, don't worry about it. They'll only use those facilities for sleeping, taking a shower, and maybe eating breakfast. And after that, they'll be out of your communities. They'll only come back to go to sleep. So don't worry about it. They've said things like, we'll only have maybe 200, at the most 500 in your community or in this particular facility. Nothing to get out of sorts about. All of this will be over in short order. Don't even upset yourselves about it. They say this. This is the promises that we're hearing already.
I know that's right.
It really is a sad story. We're looking at once great cities that are now, they're just falling apart, actually. And no, we can't blame all of this on illegal immigration, but certainly they are exacerbating the problem. I guess now is a good time to live in a suburb, because if you notice, Mayor Adams, he didn't say anything about Governor Abbott sending illegals to the suburbs. He said they're sending them to our cities, the big black-led cities. So suburbanites, I guess you can wipe your brow and give yourselves a big sigh of relief. I've just been handed this piece of paper, and it says, breaking, suburbs are not off limits when it comes to the temporary placement of illegals, whether they like it or not. Sorry, Deb. I think we should go to a correspondent. There has to be one out there somewhere.
Look, we're not a sanctuary county. We're not a sanctuary town. New York City is. They touted that they were. They touted that they would take care of everyone who came.
They're on edge after learning Friday about New York City Mayor Eric Adams' plan to send migrants seeking asylum by the busload to Armani Hotel.
You let this go on, it's going to get more. It's going to be more.
but less than a mile away from Orange Town Hall. They share their frustration that they really had no say-so in the matter.
So they're going to house them for 4 months. That violates Orange Downtown Code.
That's before Rockland County officials issued a state of emergency that now prohibits hotels from housing migrants without a written agreement from the county executive.
Uh-oh.
Well, I guess this is what's called a fluid story. Things are changing rapidly. Well, with all of this fluidity, so what exactly is President Biden doing? This is the plan. President Biden is setting up processing centers in Guatemala and Colombia where people can apply for asylum before they come to the southern border. Number 2, Biden's administration is requiring the illegals to use a computer app to make appointments to request entry into the country. These appointments are being set 3-4 years out. So, in other words, someone opens the app, they schedule an appointment to request entry into the country. They won't see anyone until 2027. That's the earliest they'll start seeing people. Number 3, the Biden administration has made agreements with Mexico and several other countries to provide what's being called humanitarian parole for people coming from several Latin American countries and Haiti. So we have asylum, or we can get humanitarian parole. Number 4, the Biden administration is sending 1,500 troops to the southern border. Now, if you're thinking those troops will be there to guard the border, think again. Those 1,500 troops are being sent to help process people into the country. Number 5, the Biden administration is expanding immigration. I did say expanding, to get in more people from Ukraine, Afghanistan, and several Central American countries. I have no more to say. There's nothing else to add. That's it. You thought there was going to be more, didn't you? Sorry.
You gotta be kidding me.
The president is being consistent because if you look at each of those points, they all have one thing in common. They bring in more people into the country. None of this is about keeping illegals out of the country. In fact, as I said earlier, people are coming in from 160 countries. 160 countries. And none of those steps that I just delineated are for turning people away. It's all about come on in, Jack.